Windows Server Backup is a feature that's natively built into the operating system. You just have to actually turn the feature on, but it's always part of the Windows operating systems, and that has always been true. What it does is allows you to perform backup and recovery in your Windows Server environment. Now, some characteristics of this. You can perform a full server backup. Now, this would be the operating system and all volumes with the operating system. So if you have a second disk attached to your machine, we'll say it's the E drive, an F drive, whatever it is, you back up the entire operating system. That's going to be all the data, all the drives. So truly a full backup, so you can restore that server to exactly its current configuration if something were to happen and you needed to perform a full server restore. You can also back up individual files and folders. You can back up the system state data. That is just the operating system. Now, along with the operating system, it's going to have all the apps. But this would not back up a second drive. So if I have an E drive I save data to, that's not part of the system state data. Now, what's interesting between these three, who would ever back up individual files and folders and not the operating system? The answer, no one would ever do that. What you may do is back them up on a separate schedule. I may back up the full server at 11 p.m. every night. Assuming my company works 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., late at night, I may perform a full server backup. I may have a backup run that backs up files and folders throughout the day. That's possible. You may back up the system state data at a specific time. So you may do more than one of these, but you just may do them on a different schedule. If you are on a Hyper-V host, you can actually choose to back up just the Hyper-V configuration, and you can select which virtual machines are actually backed up. Now, if I'm on a Hyper-V host, you certainly want to back up the virtual machines. You want to back up the Hyper-V configuration. But as we said before, you can do all of this on a completely separate schedule. So it's not that you would choose one of these and not the other. You just do them at different times, possibly. Now, if you do a full server backup, that will encompass the files, folders, system state, and the virtual machines and Hyper-V configuration. Microsoft did specifically build in a command line utility, which they call Windows Backup Admin. The command line itself is WBAdmin that you could use, but more likely you would actually use PowerShell if you were going to do this today. Implementing Windows Backup is very straightforward. This is one of those things that is more planning than the actual implementation itself. So some things you may want to consider. When you back up file servers and web servers, what schedule are you backing them up on? For your file server, how often do files change? Now that may vary from volume to volume, from server to server, depends on the type of data you put on it. For your web servers, are your websites associated with some type of web application, databases or something like that? If so, how are you backing those up? What schedule are you backing those up on? When we talk about domain controllers, we back up Active Directory. Now, there is no option you'll ever see that says, click here to back up Active Directory. Active Directory domain services is actually part of the system state. So if you back up the system state or full server backup, you back up Active Directory. If you needed to restore it, you just restore. At a minimum, you restore the system state or full server if this were a domain controller that failed. You can also back up other products. So if this was a Microsoft Exchange server, we could back up the full Exchange configuration, all the mailboxes. If this were SharePoint or anything like that, you could back up those as well if they're on your server.